It's pretty hard to believe, but the San Diego Padres in the 2024 season is already over halfway completed. We just finished up game 81 the other day, and there's a lot to talk about, obviously, going into this season. I'm Padres Previews Max, and I'm doing a collaboratory video with my main man at the East Village Times, Diego, Stat Nerd Baseball. This is going to be the beginning of a series that we're going to do together. But first off, we just want to get into some midseason evaluations. So, Diego, based on what you've seen so far, how are you feeling about the Padres?
I gotta be honest, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling better than I felt at the beginning of the season. Just going into the season, I know it was a weird off season to say the least. We didn't really get that big acquisition. It was more of we lost Juan Soto, but then we get Dylan Cease right before Korea. So I honestly I have mixed feelings about where we are this season. The offense stepping up over the last 20 games is definitely welcome. The rotation not stepping up in that same span is concerning. It's kind of like one part of the team is hot when the other is not. Just waiting for that all to line up, honestly.
I mean, yeah. So we currently sit at 43 and 41. We're going for the sweep of the Nationals right now as we record. The Padres currently on top 6-0. So hopefully they're going to get their first sweep of the Nationals since 2009. I was listening on the radio, and that's what Jesse was talking to us about. But the thing about the Padres to me is I still think at this time that they're an average team. And that's not a bad thing per se, because the National League clearly is very underwhelming. And at least right now, where we are in the season, you only need to be average to make that final wild card. I do think that we have the ceiling to be very good. But the one thing that I'm not encouraged by this season is that it just doesn't look like they have that ability to get hot. And I really hope that they do complete the sweep today, because that's going to make it a 6-1 homestand, which would be just so huge. And then that's a big opportunity to go out and play the Red Sox, who are playing their best baseball this season, who've really emerged in the American League, especially in that really tough NL East division. I think that the Padres, they can be very good, and that this team could be dangerous. Obviously, we're dealing with a lot of injuries, but the fact of the matter is they have to have that run. They're looking like they maybe are getting in one right now. I don't want to say anything, because it seems like whenever we are encouraged, something like that happens. But I think that the biggest thing for this team is to be able to get hot and run with it. Obviously, the narratives of Jurickson and Profar and just guys picking each other up, next guy up. Tatis is out right now. Darvish looks to not be back soon. So I just think that they have to get hot, and I am overall encouraged by what we've seen in this homestand so far. And I really hope they can get hot, especially as they go to Boston.
Yeah, I'm going to agree, because over their last, let's see. So they had a 7-game homestand right now. And the last homestand, they swept the A's to end it. So they're 9-1 in their last, hopefully 9-1. Don't want to jinx that, but hopefully 9-1 in their last 10 home games. And I think they're finding some semblance of form. I honestly, I will agree, they are right now an average team, but there's nothing wrong with being average, especially with the disaster that is the NL wildcard race. I don't know, for our viewers out there, I don't know who's seen the movie Cars, the beginning of that movie when there's that giant car wreck. That's the NL wildcard race right now, to be quite honest. And honestly, I think you just gotta keep winning series. Hopefully, get some sweeps mixed in there as well. You don't want to get swept again. You want to be the team that's doing the sweeping, and they don't need that much to be an elite team because of the talent that's currently injured. You mentioned Tatis is out till probably the All-Star break, if not later than that. We don't know when Darvish is coming back. Musgrove, we don't know what's going on with him. Bogart's hit BP today, so he's probably going to be back after the All-Star break if they want to play it safe. I would hope that they play it safe with him. So this team, as they're currently constructed, does look average, but they're just missing pieces all around. So
yeah, and I think at least in this last homestand stretch, obviously going into it, they had that really poor homestand or road trip where they just won a single game against the Mets and the Phillies. But as a whole, at least beating that Brewers team 3 out of 4 games, and what we've seen from the first 2 games in the National Series, yes, the Nationals are not a really good team, but the fact that the Padres, they're clawing back and they're not giving up, that obviously has to say something. But I think a big storyline to pay attention to, especially as we get into July toward the All-Star break, is Manny Machado is actually starting to play better. Of course, the numbers as a whole are not there, but if you guys want to remember back to 2022, we did not have Fernando the entire season. When we got Juan Soto, he literally was not very good. Didn't even have an 800 OPS in the Padres. Manny Machado absolutely carried that team. Over his last, let's see, I have it pulled up right here. Over the last 28 days, Machado is hitting 320 and he's at an 828 OPS, 3 homers. So the slug is not completely there, but as long as he starts to actually feel himself more at the plate, that's going to be so much big for this team, because whether people want to admit it or not, it's really frustrating to see him not run out a ground ball and to just see him ground into a bunch of double plays. But he is the guy that people look to in this team. And if their leader, what we saw in 2022, is playing like the superstar that he can be, I think that he could absolutely put this team on his shoulders, especially if we get a healthy Bogarts back and Tatis returns, hopefully not too late after that. So I think that Machado, that's going to be a huge thing to keep a close watch of, because this team kind of goes as he goes.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. I was just on the home run he hit last night. Like that was honestly a moment where I was like, yeah, I think he's back. Like just seeing the way that he hit that ball, it was a low and in fastball. He struggled to hitting low and in pitches this year. Just from watching every single game, he usually is kind of swinging over the top of some of them. But then the fact that he gets on that one early and then sends it out, and then just the reaction of the whole team afterward, like emptying the dugout, everyone's out there to greet him. That's the kind of energy that we needed. Like we didn't really have that last season. The last time I remember seeing that was in 2022, because I was at the game right after they traded for Soto, that Colorado game, and that was the energy they had when Brandon Drury hit the grand slam in the first inning. And that's the kind of energy that I feel this team has really needed. And seeing Machado really start to heat up over like the last month or so, especially against left-handed pitching, because that's the big thing. This team has struggled against lefties, and Machado was a pretty big reason for that. And now that he's hitting lefties like this month, I saw it somewhere. I think Clark, one of our fellow East Village Times writers, posted this. He has like a 170 WRC plus against lefties this month, which is 70% above league average, and which is incredible. And he's really starting to heat it up this month. And you were saying like we need him to produce, yeah, because guys are not there in the lineup. Like we know what the ceiling of this lineup can be. We've just never seen it, because either someone's been injured or they're not all in the lineup at the same time. And Bogarts barely played after we got Arraez, so it's just kind of all the parts are there. It just hasn't the puzzle hasn't been put together in its entirety yet.
Yeah, and like again, with Tatis being out for extended periods of time, this kind of is reminiscent of 2022. Like obviously the whole season, especially before Soto got there, we had that one guy, and it was Machado. Like Cronenworth, I know he was an all-star that year, but he still did not have the best offensive numbers. Even Jake's starting to pick it up. Like he started off the year really hot, then he had that cold stretch, and now he's starting to really see the ball well. I was really impressed by that lefty double to the opposite field last night off Mackenzie Gore. And yeah, like as you mentioned, starting pitching and left-handed starting pitchers, that was the biggest problem for this team in the first half. And it really didn't make sense, because we have a very righty-heavy lineup for one, and then for two, a lot of our guys have good career numbers against left-handed starters, especially Machado. And to see them all just like getting fooled on everything the entire first half. Obviously, the first couple games of the second half, Patrick Corbin, Mackenzie Gore, those are two lefties. We got 3 runs off Corbin. I guess you'd want to see more, considering he's not a very good pitcher. But I think last night was like the first real consistent night that felt like, I guess, that era of 2022 that you were talking about, the Drury energy. Just like Machado picking up profar after Keibert Ruiz, and he got into it. Like that is like, that kind of like almost brought me chills, because after the 2023 season, it's almost like you forgot the type of feeling when these guys are playing with such passion. Like even the Houston Astros, kind of their start to the season reminded me of our entire 2023 season, where everybody's talking about how we have the talent, but we can never get it going. And now all of a sudden the Astros, 10.5 back in the AL West a week and a half ago, are 4.5 back. They're back to 500, and they're ready to go on a run and take that division back. Like that's what we wanted the entire season last year with the Padres, not the division, but to at least be a good team and make the playoffs or whatever. And this team right now, like this is a huge opportunity. I'm really hoping for the sweep. I'm still not going to say anything. 6-0 as it stands right now, but I think that's a huge momentum shift for us to have that huge 6-1 road trip and then be going to Boston. They got Jarren Duran, who's been absolutely unbelievable this season. They're playing their best baseball. They got great pitching. Tanner Houck has been incredible. They got a good staff. They got a sneaky good team out there in the AL East. And I think that it's going to be a big test to us, because kind of this whole first half, the stories, our home production was not there, but the visiting production was there. And now the last, at least stretch, is kind of the opposite. Our visiting production, when we go away from Petco, been struggling a bit, but at home, we've been really starting to play better baseball, 13-4 in our last 17. here in San Diego. So I think that it's just going to be huge for this team to get hot in the summer month and really gain some momentum that will propel them forward, especially into the All-Star break.
Yeah, honestly, like I was hearing this with Don and Mudd on the broadcast last night. They were saying like the production at home and on the road was going to even out at some point. It seems to be doing so finally. Would have loved it if it was, I don't know, 20 games ago, but you know, as long as it happens, that's kind of something that never really happened last season. And just looking forward, like up to the Reds, they're taking on the Red Sox, and I'm not quite sure who they're facing afterwards. But like Boston is a pretty good team. They are playing good baseball, as you mentioned. The one thing I will say about the Padres that this leans in their favor: Boston's not throwing a lefty, as far as I know. Their whole
Yeah,
rotation, I'm pretty sure, is just right-handers. So, given how the Padres perform against righties this season, I'm optimistic about it. But when it comes to just their production right now, I think there's a few guys like I think that really merit like mentioning. Like Kyle Higashioka's had like an insane month of June. Like he's had like 6 home runs this month, and like every other
yeah, he's like
catcher has no more
slugging
than
like an
3.
unbelievable amount lately.
Like the thing with him is like he doesn't get a lot of hits, but when he does, he makes them count, which is like really important for this team. And then
Mm.
the bullpen really stepping it up like over the last how long has it been, like the last 10 games that the Padres starters haven't really been going very deep. I would really hope today that's different. And as I check over, Cease just through the 6th inning, so it looks like the bullpen might have an easier day today. But I think the bullpen like really stepping it up. Like I know like people have been like, oh, Eniel De Los Santos and Stephen Kolek and Johnny Brito. Everyone's been like, oh, those guys haven't been good. But for every one of them who hasn't been good, we've had a guy who's come out of nowhere to just dominate, like
Yeah,
Jeremiah Estrada. Like just
definitely. And then
he
like
struck out 13 in a row over 3 appearances. Like how does this happen?
yeah, I
Like
mean, it's incredible. I mean, the Padres over the last couple of years, their bullpen, while there have been shaky moments, I think any team that has a good bullpen has a great chance to be good because as long as you can have a starting pitcher that's not giving up 5 earned runs every game, and as far as I can tell, like other than select Randy Vasquez starts, that's usually not the case. If this team can hopefully get up in games early and hand it off to the bullpen, that's how you just win consistent ball games. After Boston, we could go head to Arlington to face the defending world champions who are not playing good baseball. The Rangers have really not had a good season so far. But, I mean, the Red Sox, even while they've been playing like the best ball they've played this entire season, I had the opportunity to catch 3 Red Sox games in April because I go to school over there in Boston. And from my evaluation, I think that they really just hang on their guys that carry them, like Jarren Duran. Obviously, he's been great. But even the big bats that they have that – like Tristan Casas has been out. He's on the 60-day injured list. And I will say another thing about the Red Sox is that you got to keep putting the ball in play because their defense is really bad. Like just watching them 3 games, I think I've never seen so many consistent errors on like routine plays. Obviously, they have superstar fielders in there, but there's like a lot of opportunities for the Padres to take advantage of that. So I think that, it should be a good series and that hopefully if we sweep right here at the Nationals, we can just take this momentum in because it's all about getting hot. It's the same thing that you'll ever see in the postseason. It doesn't matter who the best team is on paper. It's who's the hottest team. We saw that with the 84-win Diamondbacks last year. Like if the Padres were to have made the playoffs last year with how good of the baseball they've been playing, they could have went on that same run. So it just goes to show you that if this team could find a stretch where they win, 15 of the next 20, like I'm not saying right now, but in general, that'd be huge to not only keep them high in the standings for a playoff spot, but to keep that threshold where they're not going to drop below a certain 500 point where they seem to hover around all season long. I think that's going to be big for this type of team.
yeah, a 17-game win streak might be nice. Just saying.
Yeah, like the
But
2021 Cardinals, but that doesn't always seem realistic. I just think they got to continue to play good baseball. I mean, we haven't even talked about them really yet. Obviously, Jurickson, Profar. If we talk about a guy carrying a team, Machado 2022, Jurickson, Profar 2024, and he's literally getting paid $1 million. And he's just happy to be here. He clearly is passionate about the game, and whatever works in San Diego, something clicks with Profar because he's been unbelievable. I remember when we were all really begging Preller to go after Tommy Pham when we signed Jurickson Profar. I got to put some respect on his name. I'm like, come on, guys. We really think Jurickson Profar is going to be a good starting everyday left fielder. Well, thank goodness I've eaten my words because he's just been unbelievable. Obviously, the defense is It's solid. He's not ever going to be like a gold glove fielder, but just what he does with the bat, he leads the National League in on base percentage, which is easily top 2 important hitting stat. I would say OPS obviously would probably be the highest to indicate how good somebody is. But the point is he's getting consistent hits, and he's been one of the most clutch hitters in any, of those situations. I remember referencing Clark again at East Village Times. He had a tweet thread that said in clutch situation, Profar is posting a 227 WRC plus. So basically he's 127% above average at the plate in those clutch high leverage situations. We saw the walk-off the other day. We saw the grand slam yesterday. Jurickson Profar is absolutely an all-star, and he's been one of the only reasons that this team is currently in a playoff spot and looks to continue to play better baseball.
I mean, with Jurickson Profar hitting as well as he is, like, first off, there's no way he's not starting in the All-Star game. Like, I'm just gonna get this out of the way. Like,
Yeah.
he should be starting in the All-Star game without a doubt. But the production that he's put up is something that, like, this team is really needed. And I honestly, like, having looked over like his entire career, like, he's played on some kind of talented Rangers teams. He played on an A's team that made the playoffs. I can't explain why he's so good here, but the thing I noticed is it's only in even numbered years. Like in 2020, he was really good for the Padres when they made the playoffs. 2021, they gave him the contract. He kind of struggled. He opted into the contract. 2022 is a great year. I don't want to say it's like an even year thing because like that's not very on brand for my channel. But the one thing I will say about Jurickson Profar is like he's hitting the ball in the air. That's the biggest change. Like I think it was like Jolly Olive from John Boy Media who made a video about Jurickson Profar like a month ago, and it's like he's actually like kicking his leg. Like he has a bigger leg kick, more like Tatis had it like when he was hitting like incredibly well. And he's just hitting the ball in the air because he's always had like good barrel rates. He's always been a good hitter in terms of hitting the ball hard. It was just always kind of just going on the ground. So just seeing that Profar, he's kind of, I wouldn't say like, how do I put this? I don't think this is a flash in the pan for Jurickson Profar. I think that maybe he's not going to be like a top 5 MVP finisher, but if he can put up like 3 or 4 WAR this season, like on a $1 million contract, like I know AJ Preller gets a lot of flack, and rightfully so. I will be honest. There are times where he makes a trade, and I'm like, AJ, what are you doing? Like, but getting Jurickson Profar, who is going to be more of a role player this season, and he's been one of your best hitters. Like, not just that, but like some of the guys that they've brought in as depth, like Donovan Solano. Like I was reading that it was either him or Tommy
Pham.
Pham.
311 with 2 strikes, like that's huge.
Professional hitter. Like the thing is, like even though Solano was always like a thorn in the side for the Padres when he played with the Giants, like there was always just something about his game that just stood out. Like he's like the term professional hitter just gets thrown around. Like I just used it, but like he really is a professional hitter. He's not going for the home run all the time. He's just trying to, put the ball in play, driving the runs, and just doing those little things right. And I really think that translates for this team that has, you've got guys who can get on base. And I just realized we haven't even talked about Jackson Merrill, and we've been going for 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Merrill, he's been huge, especially in his rookie season. I think that this power stretch that we saw, I know I saw a statistic that his 7 home runs in 10 games, Tatis, and Soto are the only players to ever do that at like their age or younger. Obviously, Merrill, like playing his age 21 season as a rookie. And I think that he's only going to get better because, sure, nobody was expecting him to put up a 900 OPS. And for at least a good deal, he had that stretch where, yes, his batting average looked solid, but his OPS was like in the 660s. But he's really learning to slug. And I want to say it's also extremely impressive that he's playing center field for the first time in his entire career. He's been a shortstop literally his whole life up into the minor leagues. He switches to center field, and he's playing amazing defense out there, and that's huge. And obviously, sometimes position changes also mess with you at the plate because there's so much more stuff to worry about. So I think the Padres, they have a stud in Jackson Merrill, and that's been a big different reason why this team looks a lot different than last season. Obviously, last season I still would say they had more talent as a whole, but they've been getting production out of guys that you would not expect. We want to name it off right now, like Profar, obviously, but Matt Waldron, especially in the starting rotation, Higashioka with his recent power surge, like the Padres catching. It's definitely been a little bit of a disappointment with what we saw with Campusano, especially after last season where he had an 847 OPS, average over 300, and it looked like he's finding that top prospect that we signed the international deal or whatever. But, I think that having guys step up and fulfill the roles that nobody really saw them giving production at that level, that's just the only reason that this team is still hanging around there and still very much so in this playoff race. That's not too good because it's a National League, but I think that we've been getting really good production from the guys that you would not really expect.
Yeah, most certainly. Like the thing, I just saw Jackson Merrill's like Savant page. There's so much red, and he's only going to get better at this point. I think the fact that they're playing him against lefties now, I think, is really important because early in the season, like they were kind of shielding him against some of the lefties, but now he's playing against like pretty much every day, and I think that contributions from Jackson Merrill definitely are very much do not need. They should go noticed. They should not go unnoticed because, like you said, he's 21. I think I saw somewhere that he's the only player 21 years old or younger to hit like 6 home runs in a 10-game span, other than Willie Mays.
Yeah.
Like, to have a comparison like that, like I'm not saying like I'm not saying oh he's going to be next Willie Mays. Like we don't know that. It's too early to tell in his career. That and Willie Mays is a one of a kind player. Like you're not just
Willie Mays.
like the comparison
Willie Mays
would
is
be
Willie Mays. Rest in peace.
exactly.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, they were shielding him in the front in the beginning of the season from those lefties. I do want to mention like the splits are very noticeable, like 324 average against righties, 835 OPS versus 202 lefty, 594 OPS. Like, yes, it's obviously a struggle, especially when he's facing like MLB talent level lefties for the first time ever. And he'll always be better against right-handed pitching. Of course, that's like pretty expected, but I do expect as he gets it more consistent playing time against lefties that he'll get at least more decent and then at least become almost or if a league average hitter from the left side with left on left matchups, which I think we've been seeing a lot more improvement because early on that those splits that we've already seen are a lot different. They were even worse. So I think Matt Merrill, he's got the confidence. If you listen to any of his interviews, all he cares about is the team and how what he can do helps the team win. It's not about what he's doing. It's about what he's doing that helps the team. And I think, listen to his interviews, it's very impressive. It's like he's like a veteran who just knows what he wants to do with this team. So I think that's really huge for the staff. I also want to shout out Ruben Niebla for the 50th time. I think that he's one of the best things that's ever happened in this organization. The bullpen, as we've been talking about throughout this point of this season, while there have been definitely a lot of hiccups in certain areas, just like what Robert Suarez has done, even though Estrada, his ERA has really ballooned after this stretch that he's been playing with flu symptoms. Yeah, the 13 strikeouts in a row, it's been impressive. Adrian Morejon, we haven't even mentioned. Looks like he's finally playing like somebody he was supposed to be. He's 25 now. He's struggled with injuries his entire career, but he's really starting to throw the ball very well. So I think that there's a lot of encouragement to think about. In Ruben Niebla, he's got to take his credit where it's due.
Yeah, like honestly, like when I heard like this, I'm gonna go back like 4 years for this. Like when I heard that Niebla was getting hired, like there was an article I read literally right away, and it was just like he taught Corey Kluber a 2-seam fastball in one bullpen session, and before you know it, he's like a 3-time Cy Young Award winner. Like, there's a chance that Corey Kluber doesn't figure out like what that pitch is for him without Ruben Niebla. And just seeing what he's done for the Padres pitching staff the last few seasons is honestly like like you said, he's one of the best moves that the Padres have ever made in their history. Like the Padres have always been good with relievers for some inane reason. Like even just going back to when Darren Balsley was their pitching coach, like they always had a way to get relievers just kind of out of nowhere. Like when Kirby Yates became Kirby Yates, Brad Hand became Brad Hand, and then they traded Brad Hand because they had Kirby Yates. And I could keep going with the names, but I'll save that for a trivia video.
Yeah,
but when it comes to just the Padres bullpen, like the guys have stepped up. Like we said, Estrada came in as a waiver claim, and now he's like your 8th inning guy. Like you got Wandy Peralta for $4.5 million, and he's performed pretty well, even though sometimes it's just like you see him walk the first guy, and it's like kind of like but then he'll like dot a changeup at the lower end of the zone, and then Adrian Morejon being what he has been so far this season, like is really. Like I'm really personally really pleased with it because like I've been following him as a prospect since like 2017, and shameless plug, but I did make a whole 15-minute video about his whole career and just seeing how finally they know what to do with him. Like his role as a pitcher has finally been defined, and it's really just led him to succeed. So Honestly, like I think the bullpen, like if I were to step into teacher mode for a second and give the bullpen a grade, I'd have to give them like a B or a B plus because there have been some hiccups.
Yeah.
Kolick hasn't been particularly great early on in the season, but
Matsui started off hot, but then he cannot throw strikes lately, and he's been like walking everybody. So it's there, but I think as a whole, yeah, that's a good grade for this bullpen.
yeah, and then the rotation. You mentioned Matt Waldron. Where would we be without Matt Waldron?
He's emerged himself, honestly, as our number one at the moment, considering, Cease after that really hot start, he's been struggling up, besides today's start, obviously, over the
Yeah.
last over the last month and a half, Cease has not really been the same. Darvish had that great start, but then the injury got to him, and then his ERA ballooned a little bit. Michael King's been in and out of being really good. I still think he's been really solid for this team. Obviously against the Brewers, that seemed like a pretty unlucky bloop fest. But Matt Waldron, if I'm not mistaken, I think he has the lowest starting pitcher ERA on our club right now, and he's the number 5. So,
He does.
He's been unbelievable. And yeah, especially after that early season hiccups that he had, and we were all saying, the Matt Waldron experiment's done. Credit to the Padres, credit to Niebla for sticking with them because they saw something that we didn't. And clearly now we're seeing what they saw. So that's obviously going to be huge. I think we should also, now we talked about it a little bit earlier, but mention the injuries that this team is facing. Darvish looked like he was going to be coming back. He was supposed to start one of these games against the Nationals, but now he's getting some elbow inflammation, which is never good. There's also an update on Musgrove. He's progressing with this throwing program, which is really encouraging because, to be honest with you, especially after he went on the shelf the second time, I personally thought he was done. So I still don't know, but I think that it's looking a lot better. Bogarts is taking BP now, and there's an update. He's actually going to be swinging with 2 hands, which is going to be very interesting because if you've ever seen Xander Bogaerts swing a bat, his entire approach is for his one-hand swing. He flies
literally
over,
like this and then fly up.
He's going to have a completely different swing.
It's like early Tatis before he got the injury to the shoulder. And that's something like there was a point last season. There was a home run Bogarts hit against Arizona that he hit with 2 hands. And it was it was the best sounding ball off his bat that I heard all of last season. Because the thing that I've noticed when he swings, like he finishes the one-handed swing, is like the launch angle is there, but you're not getting the full exit velo that you could be getting simply because you're kind of killing half of your momentum going into the swing.
Yeah, obviously when he was in Boston, the guy was a dog, but just the way his right-handed swing works, and I'm not going to bash him for his career because he's had an incredible career, how many silver sluggers or whatever he has, but he does fly completely open, and obviously he's changing it up to protect his shoulder. But I think that, I do know what home run you were referencing. It was in Chase Field to dead center, and he just stayed completely inside it, but it was a completely different looking swing. So that's going to be interesting to see moving on. Hopefully, and yeah, I know we all were really frustrated with this whole entire season, rightfully so, $280 million and a sub 600 OPS, but I cannot tell you now that we've been missing for a while. It's going to be exciting to see Xander Bogaerts hopefully back in the lineup in hopefully early July. We'll see maybe mid All-Star break area. I'm not sure, but obviously Fernando, Tatis, if you guys didn't catch the interview, he actually said he had cramps all over his body after Korea, which is in March, the beginning of the season. He started feeling it in that series in San Francisco. So, and I'm not going to use this as an excuse because he's actually had a good season. He did have that horrible stretch, but he's not having the same 960, 970 OPS seasons as he did before this suspension and the wrist injury. But, apparently, based on what Tatis was saying, he's essentially been playing this entire season and playing to an all-star caliber level. I mean, his numbers right now, he should be a starter. Yeah, exactly. So it is a bit of a concern that they waited this long because a stress reaction is pretty serious. And I just hope that it heals and that this team could continue to tread water. And I think that's the right term to use because they're not going to be winning, at least what I would perceive, the same types of games as they do with Tatis in the lineup. So that's definitely going to be a big blow to this club to lose Fernando for probably a little over a month. We'll see. But I just think that, at least what we've seen from these couple games against the Nationals, excellent job so far by this team, especially the resiliency that both the wins in this series were comeback wins, which is obviously showing something a lot different from last season. Like that team, they got down 2-0, they gave up. So
that team felt like
while the record isn't so much different, there's clearly a difference in fight in this team. And I think that can really carry them moving forward as we really get into the second half.
Yeah, like the thing I'll say about like Tatis is like he's been playing on one leg and he's putting up all-star numbers, and then 2021 he's playing basically on 1.5 arms and putting up MVP type numbers.
Yeah.
So the thing with this team that I will say is their depth is actually in a lot better place than they were last season, and even in 2021, like because 2021 we don't want to talk about that, like yikes. And then last season, like if someone went down, like you were playing Rougned Odor in right field.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
yeah, I think that the depth definitely is a lot better there, and it simply just comes from the production that we're getting from guys that you did not expect. Like Solano, he's emerged as an everyday starter, and he has the second highest batting average with 2 strikes in the entire major leagues. So it's pretty remarkable the production that they're getting in budget opportunities. And obviously, you could say it's a lot of what ifs. What if Machado consistently turns into playing like the highest paid infielder in baseball? What if Bogarts starts playing, gets back from his injury, and starts playing like the type of player he was in Boston, what we saw in the last month of last year's season, where he was playing like a superstar again? So, yes, there's always going to be a lot of what ifs for every team, but at least where this team sits right now at 43 and 41, hopefully 44 and 41 after the game. It's currently 6-0 in the 8th inning. I think that while it hasn't been the most fun first half, and there's definitely been a lot of, oh, well, it looked like we were about to go on a run, and we just lost 6 out of our last 7 games. Looks like that just happened, but now here we are, 6-1, hopefully homestand after today's game, knock on wood. But I think that as a whole, my overall opinion is, considering everybody was saying how the Padres would be a 4th place team, I personally didn't believe that because I saw through the Diamondbacks. I saw through the Giants. I knew that those teams weren't as legit as people were thinking. I think that this team still has overproved the expectations out of a lot of baseball fans. Obviously, us Padres fans did think more highly of them going into the season because I thought that the Giants acquisitions were sketchy, and I knew that Arizona just got extremely hot last season. But I think as a whole, if I were to give this team a grade, I would give it a B. I think that's kind of middle of the pack because that's where they stand right now, kind of an average team. They play bad baseball, and then they play really good baseball against some of the best teams in baseball, and then they lose against a bad team. So hopefully that changes, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to consistently win those games that you're supposed to win. But if I were to grade this team as a whole for the first half of 2024, I would give it a B.
yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that grade. I will also give them a B because they've not reached their ceiling yet. We've seen some of how average the floor can be. We've seen they're doing a better job of coming back in games. They're not giving up. It's not like, oh no, we're down like 7-0 against the Dodgers. Oh no, time to just roll over. No, like I know the term playing like it's their World Series gets thrown around a lot, but why wouldn't you want your team to play hard? At the end of the day, like this team is showing a lot more fight than last season. I don't want to say it's a manager thing. I want to say it's a team thing. It's a team culture thing. And just considering how many injuries that they've dealt with, I know other teams deal with injuries too. That goes without saying. It's a sport, it's an active activity, and throwing a baseball is not a natural activity for the human anatomy. But just considering where they are right now and how they've been playing, the contributions they've gotten from players all over the roster, honestly, I gotta agree with you. I gotta give them a B. If we see this team rattle off like 9 of 10, maybe they can jump up to an A, but until we see that, I'm going to give them a B.
Yeah, and like lastly, I think that kind of what we've been talking about, how this team doesn't seem to be able to really get hot and go on that run. If they sweep the Nationals today, I think the big test is going to see how they play against Boston. Like, you got to take 2 out of 3 in that series to establish that this 3-series sample size as, okay, there's their 9 of 12. There's their run. There's their 10 of 12, or whatever you want to call it. And then we can consistently just start playing good baseball and get away from that floor of 500. Because in 2022, while we were always like complaining about this and that, because we always do, we're Padres fans, they still were never sniffing that 500 mark floor. And that's the only thing that worries me with this team, because it seems like whenever they get around 500 to even a couple games over, they keep falling back. They might fall under, then they'll get back, they'll get over. They got to get over and stay over. And whatever that looks like, I hope that we'll see. But yeah, so B's from Diego, Statner Baseball, and me, Padres Previews, when rating the first half of the 2024 campaign. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. This is the first of this series where we're just going to be talking Padres baseball. here and there really throughout the rest of this season. But thank you guys for tuning in, and be sure to tune in for the next episode.